Do you want better, deeper sleep for healthier hormones? Well, today we're going to be talking about how to optimize your sleep for better hormone health in the Wild Wisdom Show. I'm Dr. Patricia Mills, a holistic medical doctor with a root cause approach to health. And today you are going to learn all of the strategies that you need in order to optimize your deep sleep so that your body can have its chance at making healthy hormones and maximizing your hormone balance. And today I'm going to cover recommendations for adults. Breastfeeding mothers will be covered towards the end, as well as children and teenagers and night shift workers. So if you're joining me live, feel free to put in your questions in the comments. I look forward to answering them for you during the show. So, you may or may not be aware that poor sleep affects hormone health in a negative way. And one of the ways that it does this is by affecting the brain's ability to coordinate hormone production throughout the day and the night. And there's also like a vice versa relationship. In order to have deep sleep, you need to have healthy hormone balance. So we're going to be looking at this from both angles. And what you need to know is that in order for you to have deep sleep, two hormones are key to be in balance. And these are the melatonin hormone, which is the hormone of sleep, the deep sleep hormone, and your cortisol hormone, which is your stress hormone. And what you need to happen for a deep sleep to happen at night is that in the morning, your cortisol needs to be high. It needs to rise, not too high, not too low. And your melatonin that was high at night needs to come down, needs to be washed out so that it doesn't interfere with other hormone productions through the day. And then as the day progresses, your cortisol should slowly come down, your melatonin should start to build. And at nighttime, you want to have high melatonin and low cortisol. So we're going to go through what it is that you need to do in order to achieve that awesome hormone balance that promotes deep sleep so that you can in turn get healthy hormones throughout the day and night. And what we've learned in fairly recent times is that the levels of your melatonin and cortisol, so not just the level, but that balance, the like that dance between the two, depend on number one, timing of light exposure through the day. And we're going to go through these crucial points through the day that you need to have specific kinds of light that your eyes are exposed to. Timing of mental stress. So, mental stress isn't good or bad, but how much you have of it and what time you expose yourself to it matters for sleep. And timing of food intake, the when you eat throughout the day will impact your ability to go to sleep at night, stay asleep, and have deep sleep. So, the reason that these are all interconnected is because of the science of the circadian rhythm. So, the circadian rhythm, if you've never heard about this before, is that circa means around, circadian, adian, the DN is day, so around the day rhythm. So, the rhythms around the day, around the 24-hour cycle. And what we've learned is that humans, all mammals, have these circadian rhythms that are dictating when certain things happen in the body. So there is a central circadian rhythm that happens in the brain that coordinates big functions throughout the body. And that's located in a specific area of the brain. And then each tissue actually has its own little circadian rhythm clock. So it sets the timing of certain things. So for example, the liver has an internal clock that is dictating when it works and when it isn't work, but it's also influenced by when we eat. So you can turn that clock on or off depending on when you eat. And you can influence the brain's clock by certain cues, which we're going to get into. And for those of you who love the science, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you want to pop over to my YouTube channel and check out the references here that I'm providing. This reference was just published in 2023. So you see, it's just so brand new, this understanding, and you're getting this hot off the press. And the title of this study is Circadian Rhythms Disrupted by Light at Night and Mistimed Food Intake Alter Hormonal Rhythms and Metabolism. So this is just so fascinating because, if you dive into this, you can get into the question of why do we have a hard time maintaining ideal weight? Why does our metabolism suffer? Why do we develop problems with our gut health? It can all be related to how you're influencing your circadian rhythm for better or for worse. And today I'm going to teach you some really key strategies that you're going to use throughout the day, and it's like free stuff that you can use in order to optimize your circadian rhythm so that you can get that deep sleep and that whole body health. Now, I mentioned that central clock in the brain and it coordinates hormone balance. And what it happens is that that clock sits in the middle of the brain around the hypothalamus. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus for those who want to know. And it receives inputs from the outside, such as light, and from the inside, such as mental stress and digestion. And what's interesting is that when it comes to light, what happens is that light in our environment is filtered into the eyes and hits the back of the eyes, which is called the retina. And the retina is directly linked to the brain through the optic nerve. And so that the retina is actually kind of a part of the brain extending out of the skull and into the back of the eyes. It's actually extremely fascinating. I love this kind of geeky scientific stuff. And what happens is that the retina part, the part of the retina that communicates with the brain, part of the brain that sets your circadian rhythm, that internal clock, it senses a couple of things. It senses brightness, which is called lux, Lux, so the lux of the light, the brightness of the light. And it also senses the spectral power distribution. In other words, the colors of the light, which colors are more intense. So, for example, if studies have looked at comparing incandescent light bulbs to fluorescent light bulbs, LED light bulbs, and sunlight. And what they have found is that they differ not only in brightness, although you can make certain light bulbs quite bright. What they differ from, for sure, compared to sunlight, is that color, that spectral power distribution. So, totally different. And that spectral power distribution actually does influence the circadian rhythm. So I'm going to be teaching you what light you should use and expose yourself to, and what light you should avoid so as to not negatively impact your circadian rhythm for sleep. Mental stress is interesting because the production of the cortisol hormone in response to mental stress can, if you get too much mental stress towards the evening time, you can actually, that cortisol hormone will go into the brain and impact the functioning of that internal clock in the brain. So again, you will mess up your hormonal rhythms, your hormone production, with stress at the wrong time of day. And I'll talk you through what that might look like in an evening routine. And I mentioned already that eating changes the liver circadian clock, which then influences the central clock. So when the liver circadian clock gets activated by eating, if it gets activated at the wrong time, it will then send it'll send a message to the brain saying, "Oh, it's daytime because we're eating. We are actually designed. We are not nocturnal animals. Our active phase for eating, our circadian rhythm for eating, is daytime." And so there are certain times of day, and I'll tell you which one. We're going to get into specifics, where after eating at a certain time, you will actually be telling the brain through that circadian clock communication that it's daytime, because it's the gut is doing the work of digestion, which it shouldn't really do at nighttime. And that will set off the balance of your circadian rhythms, which then affects your sleep in a negative way. So, when we break it down in terms of strategies, like, okay, how do we translate the science into actionable strategies? You want to know that there's 4 crucial times a day that you have to engage in very specific habits. And at first, it may seem like, oh, I don't know if I want to do these habits. It's hard to change. But habits, by definition, is that it may be hard to change a habit, but once you start doing it and you do it a few times, over time, it becomes ingrained and you get a new habit going. So these are habits that are worth working on and incorporating in the day. And so 4 crucial times a day are: before 10 o'clock in the morning, you want to do specific habits; around midday, between 12 and 2; at sunset; and after 8 p.m. So let's get into what you need to do. So before 10 a.m., you need to do a sunrise reset because what's interesting is that as the sun is rising, so it's not that you need to be outside at sunrise, but anytime around that sunrise period, which is usually around before 10 a.m., I live very far northern Canada, and there are times when the sun doesn't rise until 9 a.m., but that still gives me an hour to engage in the habit, which is to get outside without sunglasses on for at least 5 minutes. The reason being is that the sun rising colors, that spectral power distribution, is very unique to that sun rising time. You can't get it in any kind of lighting situation or any other kind of environment inside your home, no matter what you do. It's very hard. Maybe they're going to come up with something like that, but it's very unique to sun rising. So what you want to do is either get outside or open the window so there's no glass pane, right? So if it's summertime, you can open the window. If it's wintertime, you don't want to you're cold in the house, you might need to bundle up and just step outside. Minimum 5 minutes. That's about how long it takes for the retina to engage and tell the brain, send those signals and encode all the information. It's morning time, which will help your cortisol go up in a healthy way, which will drive wakefulness. You'll feel awake for the day, less likely to have that afternoon slump of low energy. And also, it'll wash out your melatonin from the night. So you need to get that melatonin washed out. Some people will say, you know what, I don't feel like eating breakfast in the morning. It may be because you haven't had enough of the right kind of light color exposure at the right time to wash out that melatonin to trigger your wakefulness and get you hungry. Because the second piece, the second habit before 10 a.m. is that you need to have your breakfast. And the reason for that is that if you don't have your breakfast before 10 a.m., your cortisol hormone will start to rise too high. It'll go too high. And actually, they've studied this. And I did a whole, if you're wondering, well, what about people who want to fast or I want to fast, because fasting does have a very good health benefits. The key is you want to break your fast before 10 a.m. and end your fast earlier rather than breaking your fast around noon and eating later. So shifting that eating window earlier, as I've talked about before on my how to fast and eat for hormone health, and I go deep into that piece. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you're eating before 10 o'clock so that your cortisol hormone doesn't rise. Research shows that cortisol hormone can rise so high if you consistently skip breakfast that you can run into hypertension and you increase your risk of death and heart attack by 22%. So it's pretty significant, that rise in cortisol that can happen over time. So you want to get out before 10 a.m., go for a sunrise break for 5 minutes. If you're at work and you haven't seen the sun yet, because you got to work before the sunrise, you may need to step outside for a sun break. You know how we used to have the smoke break? Go take a sun break. That is part of your your quality of life, and eat your breakfast. Now let's talk about the daytime. So what's interesting is that research has shown that daytime brightness and color, so the lux of the day sunlight and the color of the sunlight, which cannot be, is unless it's a device that has been specifically designed to do this, regular LED fluorescent and incandescent lighting will not do this. When you expose yourself to that kind of lux, which is about 25,000 lux at midday, it promotes earlier sleep. So you feel like going to bed at an earlier time. You sleep longer, and while you're sleeping, you have better quality sleep. That has been shown in research. So again, at midday, that's a 25,000 lux brightness. Your office, for example, in your home or your office setting, it's usually around 500 lux or less. So not very good, right? It's not a good enough lux. So what happens then is that you want to get out during the day and in the sunset. So the sunset, just like the sunrise, has a unique color spectrum. So you need to be able to get out at sunset as well. So between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m., get 5 minutes minimum sun exposure. And around sunset, again, 5 minutes minimum. Now, if you want to go for more, that's great. Don't worry if you can't. And here's the thing, that morning, midday, and evening exposure You can't be wearing sunglasses for those 5 minutes, which means that if it's really bright outside, you're wearing a hat with a brim so that the sunlight is filtering underneath the brim. You're not staring at the sun, even during sunrise. I know there's people who say that that's good for you. We are not exactly sure what the long-term health effects are of that, but it's what we do know is just being outside in that environment, even if you have a brim on, like a hat on, and the sunlight is filtering into your eyes, you're getting that sunrise, midday, and sunset color variation and brightness because sunlight filters, right? It has unique properties like that. And so, if you're someone who's been used to wearing sunglasses because you've acclimatized yourself to it, it may take some time for you to get used to even just stepping outside, even underneath an overhang. You don't need to be outside, it can be underneath an overhang like an awning. The sunlight will filter underneath that as well. As long as you don't have sunglasses on, you will get that filtering effect, and you may need to work yourself up to being able to tolerate that dose of sunlight, even just filtering sunlight with no sunglasses on. Then with the sunglasses are great for if you're then stepping out into a bright day and it's too bright, or if there's glare off of water or glare off of the snow, then you want to protect your eyes with sunglasses, right? Or if you're out for extended periods of time in bright light, then you want to wear your sunglasses, but you want that minimum 5-minute dose without the sunglasses at those specific time periods. Again, not staring at the sun, you're not doing eye damage. And that dose of sunlight has not been shown to have any negative effects for health concerns, including, for example, cataract development over time. Prolonged exposure to too much sunlight and too much brightness without protection, yes, that can happen. So then we have after 8 o'clock, and that's the time when you're really going into protection of your melatonin hormone production so that you can get what's called sleep pressure, so that your body has the pressure feeling like I feel like sleeping. And then when you go to bed, you fall asleep and stay asleep in deep sleep. So in order to do that, after 8 o'clock, you need to minimize blue light and you have to minimize the activation of mental stress. Okay. And it's interesting because the discovery that the production of melatonin is suppressed in humans in response to light is pretty recent when we think about it. It dates back to 1980. So that's in the grand scheme of things not that long ago. So it's very interesting to see the research on this really, really blooming. So after 8 o'clock, what I recommend, so I kind of do it in a stepwise approach. So it's like after 8 o'clock, after 10 o'clock. So there's certain things that should happen after 8 o'clock and certain things that should definitely happen by 10 o'clock if you haven't hit that 8 o'clock goal yet. So after 8 o'clock, what you want to do is you want to turn off overhead lights. Any overhead lights, turn it off because the eyes also document where the light is coming from in terms of the direction, the angle of light. And after 8 o'clock, the sun should not be in the sky, high in the sky. So, fires, in tribal times, we had fires. The fires were on the ground and the fire colors were more amber, like orangey, yellows, right? And so those are not bright overhead daytime light kind of color variation or position or brightness. And what you want to do is you want to put low level lamps around the house that you can then turn on and even have some amber lighting or salt lamp lighting. So for example, I bought these plug-in salt lamps and I love them because I just plug them in around the house down at the low level. And I kind of turn them on around 8 o'clock as I'm dimming the lights to kind of, I like to kind of go around the house and I start dimming things and I start turning things off and I start turning things that are low light level on at the low level. And amber lighting, by the way, which is an LED light that is more amber colored, more of like an orangey campfire glow color, you can buy at your local hardware store for very cheap. They're not expensive. You do not need to buy those really expensive designed for nighttime lighting, specialty lights that are so expensive. These ones, you just go into your home hardware or your Canadian Tire in Canada, Home Depot. I'm sure there's many other places around the world, and you just look for amber LED lighting. Okay, and that it will give you that low level kind of campfire, and you want your home to feel like a cozy cave with a warm campfire glow. That's what you're working towards as the night progresses. Now, on your phone, you want to do what's called a night shift feature. So you're going to want to go into your phone, Google how to do night shift, so that at around 8 o'clock, it starts to decrease the brightness and decrease the color, the brightness and the color spectrum to more amber. You can download a free software on your computer called f.lux, f.lux. It's an amazing software. It's free. And you set your sunset, sunrise times, and it'll automatically adjust the color of your computer to be the color of the evening sunset. It won't do brightness as much, so you will have to decrease the brightness on your computer as the night progresses. And for really bright lights like the fridge or TV, you want to dim the brightness and color of your TV if you can. But the fridge is this really bright light that is just like, boom, you open the fridge and there's this super blue light. I like to use blue blocking glasses. So this is an example of a true blue blocking glass. So it's not the kind where it almost looks like a normal glasses with a little bit of a tint. That's blue blocking for daytime if you're under fluorescent lighting or with a computer screen that's got a lot of bright blue light. This here that I'm wearing, and if you're listening to me, it looks like glasses with an extremely red orangey color. And that's what filters out the blue light pretty much completely. And that's what you need. And these ones happen to be from a company called True Dark, TrueDark. You don't need to buy from them. I have no affiliation. I'm sure there's other great companies out there, but I can speak to that being a very good quality option. And then after 10 o'clock, you really should not be exposed to almost any blue light at all. So you can actually look up, again, Google how to put a red light filter on your phone. I'm just looking to see here. Unfortunately, I don't have my phone with me, but I have it now set up that when I click the side button 3 times, so it's an accessibility feature, you can Google how to connect a red light filter to your accessibility button. And I click my phone 3 times on the side, it'll turn my screen red. So it'll be a color red. I can still see everything, but it's a red color, red filter. And in the morning, when I get up, I just click it again 3 times, boom, that red filter is gone. So it's so easy. Just it allows you to, if you want to, check your phone at night or scroll on your phone at night or look at podcasts or whatever it is without having to ruin your melatonin production, because your melatonin production, again, will be cut down by blue light, even short blue light exposures they've shown. So what they've shown is that the more blue light and the higher lux, so anything over 10 lux at night, will result in more nighttime awakenings and less deep sleep. They've shown this in humans. And so, for example, certain Kindles, like tablets for reading at night, will have a lux more than 10. So you want to make sure that any screen you're using, including a Kindle or some kind of reading tablet, and your computer and your TV, you need to have the lux less than 10, which for some people means that you have to stop watching TV at a certain time, right? So depending on how you can manipulate your technology, you want to be sure that you're protecting your melatonin production and therefore your deep sleep. The thing about melatonin production being cut down is that you could be asleep, your eyes are closed and you're sleeping, but you're not in enough deep sleep. And it's the deep sleep that actually happens mostly between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. that allows your body to be able to do things like make healthy hormones in a good balance. So this is very important. After 8 p.m., you also want to minimize digestion and mental stress. So I highly recommend no eating after 8 o'clock. Remember that study that I mentioned at the very beginning, missed time food intake? Any eating after 8 o'clock, whether it's a drink with a caloric like a milk in it or anything like that, it'll cause your body to have to start to digest, which will trigger that liver clock to turn on, which will interrupt your sleep cycle. So no eating after 8 o'clock. And for the mental stress piece, no news after 8 o'clock, no scrolling social media if it's going to activate you too much, or too activating movies and books. Like, sometimes when people are having a hard time with their sleep, you have to get that specific. So for me, after 8 o'clock, I put my phone away, I turn it on to, I don't check social media after 8 o'clock ever. I have it on my red light filter. I read books, I listen to music, and if I'm going to watch a movie on the weekend with, friends or my husband, I will wear my blue blocking glasses. And that's just what I find has really made me feel amazing throughout the day, and my hormone balance just really bang on. So, what I want you to know is that research also shows that this melatonin that we make at night gets into breast milk. So, mothers who are exposing themselves to blue light after 8 o'clock, or eating after 8 o'clock, or stress after 8 o'clock, they are also affecting the baby's ability to sleep. And sometimes I wonder if there is a massive issue these days with babies who can't sleep well at night, requiring solutions like sleep training, that then that may be actually related to this as a root cause of us unknowingly messing up our own circadian rhythms, which then affects how much the melatonin the baby gets. So with my first child, I didn't know this, so I'd be breastfeeding at night, like looking at my phone sometimes, or watching a show or something like that. I'd turn on the light. Sure, it was a table lamp, but after 10 o'clock, any night light has to be red, like just red color. Even a salt lamp is too bright for it. So I have these LED little plug-in lights that when you plug them in, they emit a red light, and that's the only kind of night light that should be in our rooms, in babies' rooms, children's, and teenagers after 10 o'clock. So if you engage in these strategies as mothers, you may find that your babies sleep better at night, which is kind of fascinating. Children and teenagers also are subject to circadian disruptions from mistimed light exposure and eating times. Now, yes, teenagers can go to bed a little bit earlier. They after a certain age, they do get designed to kind of push their bedtime later, but the blue light and the eating still matters very deeply, and we should be teaching our children and our teenagers how to protect their sleep so that they can lack of deep sleep will also create mood disorders. It'll trigger depression issues and anxiousness issues, problems with attention deficit issues, behavioral issues, weight regulation issues. I mean, it's amazing actually how much this may be a root cause in many of the things that we are witnessing in today's society. And here's the thing for shift workers, because every time I talk about this, there's always at least one person in the audience, and I'm sure here I'm going to get more than that, where they're like, well, I'm a shift worker. What about me? Well, first of all, I'm going to give you the solutions, but I really want to explain that doing shift work is a known carcinogen for health. In World Health Organization has categorized it as I believe, a class 2 carcinogen, which means that it seriously increases the risk of cancer because melatonin protects from cancer. It's a very strong anti-cancer molecule. So, by the way, all of this will also help you prevent or reduce your risk of cancer, or if you prevent a recurrence. Very important, right? And so also the shift workers are more likely, because of this hormonal disruption, to experience problems with weight, with heart disease, like heart attacks and strokes. Anyways, it's can be very messy. So if you're a shift worker, this is what the research suggests, is that if you can, if you have any influence over your schedule, try to do at least 3 consecutive days of shift work. So for example, if you're working nights, try to do it for 3 days in a row at least. And then, so as opposed to working a night shift and then a day shift, a night shift and then a day shift. Research shows that it at least allows you to get into a rhythm for that particular shift. So let's say you have a night shift. Okay. So at night, what you want to do is you do want to try to minimize your blue light exposure if you can. So wear the blue blocking glasses if you can. Try not to eat at nighttime if you can. Drink water, maybe have a few little teaspoons of honey for energy, but you're basically trying to keep your rhythm as much as possible. Now, if you need to eat something, don't worry, eat it. Make sure it's good quality food, right? Not junky snack food, because quality matters too for hormone production. And then what happens is that when you end your night shift, when you go home, don't immediately go to bed. Have a really wonderful breakfast, a very nourishing, grounding, delicious, healthy, balanced breakfast. And then go to bed later in the day and time it so that you can wake up a few hours before your next night shift. And when you decide to go to bed, whatever time that is, avoid caffeine 3 to 4 hours before bed. So, for example, maybe have it for breakfast, but not after that. If you're going to do melatonin supplementation, have the melatonin supplement 1 to 2 hours before that bedtime that you're setting for yourself. And when you go to bed, make sure the temperature of the room is cool and you're wearing a sleep mask or you have blackout curtains. And then set your timer so you wake up 1 to 2 hours before your night shift begins. Have a really wonderful meal, right? And then get back into work mode. Trying to minimize your light exposure, trying to minimize your eating out of turn. So, will these strategies work 100%? We don't know, but these are strategies to try to maximize, right? Maximize those things. So, what I have here is, and I have some questions. I'm going to keep the questions. If questions are related to the what I'm covering, I will take them. If they're not related to the topic that I'm covering, I recommend you go into YouTube, go into the video where that question is relevant, put the question in that video in the comments, and it notifies me, and I will go to your comment and I will answer it there. Okay, because I love to answer your questions, and I want it to be in the place that is relevant so other people can also benefit from that question and the answer. So the take home message is before 10 o'clock, you want your sun rising reset and you want to eat breakfast. Between 12 and 2, take a sun break. Late afternoon, have a sunset reset. And after 8 p.m., no food, minimize blue light, and minimize your mental stress. So I hope you found this helpful. And again, if you have any questions that pop up after this, put your questions in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, please share, subscribe, save. Sharing is caring, and you never know how this could change someone's life dramatically for the better. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, or night, depending on when you catch us. Goodbye, and thank you to all the viewers who joined me today. I hope you enjoyed this topic.